All right, guys. Hope everybody's having an amazing week. E3's come and gone. I thought it was a pretty interesting E3, and I think it's going to be the last E3 of this generation to really be that interesting and all about this generation. I'm a firm believer that next E3 we're going to have a lot of talk about next gen consoles, potentially from Microsoft, if not Sony. Um, so having said that, I want to wrap up or start wrapping up in these videos my impressions on E3, at least with the conferences. And the conference I want to focus on today is Sony's press conference. Now I love Sony. I'm a Sony fan, not a fanboy. In other words, I can tell you when Sony's doing bad, and I'm not just going to say I enjoyed Sony's press conference very very much, but I'm not just going to say that they won E3 because I like them the most, even though if I'm being honest, it's their games that I like the most. But a couple of things, all these were games I'd already heard about, and these are games that are not going to be coming anytime soon, not this year. Whereas Ubisoft had at least one game that I hadn't heard anything about, which was Odyssey. I know there's been leaks and whatnot. I just didn't bother to look at them, so it was very much a surprise to me. But having said that, I do want to mention that they did something remarkable, and I'm going to get that into that just a little later. But one of the things that they did a couple of things. They were very immersive in the way they presented the games. They focused on four main games. Now they did have some new game reveals. I couldn't tell you all the new games, but I know that the game Control by Remedy was relatively new. I wasn't taken by the game very much, but I can at least appreciate the fact that it was a world premiere from my perspective, anyways. But I want to get back to the other games that they had. And I know they did the whole artsy thing. They had a little bit of a clunky transition when they went from the chapel or church or barnyard type of scene to the regular auditorium, and that's to get you immersed in the game that they were showing us. But I also want to make sure that I do state that I did very much enjoy all the deep dives. I want to start off with Spider-Man. Spider-Man being a very important game to me because it represents the escapism of the whole superhero story and fulfillment of the promise of technology. For the most part, we're going to be able to be Spider-Man in about as uncompromised a way as you can feel. This will be an execution of a Marvel franchise that we never really had before in a way we've never had, especially given the technology available now, 75-inch 4K HDR display in the 900E here, and the PlayStation 4 Pro is really going to convey the cinematic feel of that title. Having said that, I want to make sure that I express how that deep dive that they took, especially when they were doing the commentary afterwards, really conveyed for me the size and scope of the map. It looked like the biggest rendition of any Spider-Man as far as world size, with a great amount of articulation. Supposedly there's going to be a great amount of side activities, and that was really driven home by the presentation. Not to mention, and I guess I'll get off into this a little early, one of the things that I enjoyed, other than the artsy stuff, which I can understand why some people have a problem with it. I'm 45 years old and I've been watching these trade shows for a long time, so anytime Sony does this, it really helps me out because it makes it a little different. Again, seeing all this in 4K, being streamed live in 4K on a 75-inch screen with HDR, I'm not sure HDR was a factor, but just the quality, image quality of this TV could put out really fulfilled the promise of being able to take in the media, take in the experience in a 4K experience, the way this television promises to do. So I thought that Sony very much fulfilled a promise of the future, and anybody that has a television of this quality, of this size, of this resolution, is basically clamoring to experience everything as much as possible. Speaking of which, I've got The Vanishing of Ethan Carter here on the Xbox One X in 4K, locked 30 frames a second. It looks magnificent. There are some issues with the 4K. If I play too long at night, I tend to get sick. And my girlfriend, if she watches me play and I go too fast, and if she watches for longer than an hour, she tends to get motion sickness too. So there is something to be said about that first-person perspective for some people. For me, it's more of a stylistic thing, but I digress. That's a subject for another video. But again, it's just great being able to experience that E3, and I hope that more and more publishers and more presenters in these conferences, especially next year, migrate to that. And I hope to see that again for PSX, the next major conference or event that I like to partake of when it comes in December. And subsequently, I think if we're going to see a PlayStation 5 in 2019, 90% chance it will be shown at PSX this year. If not, there's a 90% chance that it won't be coming in 2019, which is what I prefer actually, because we've got some amazing stuff lined up, and that's really good. I want to switch over from Spider-Man. Again, what I was, blown away with, not so much the entire scene with the raft, but the vision, which was great because it was cinematic. You have this great arena type place, but it's right adjacent to that huge open world, and I think the rendition of New York is like none other that I've ever seen before in a video game, and it's really going to complement and really going to deliver that Spider-Man experience home. And so, listen, I'm 45 years old. I don't know if I'm going to be alive in 10 years, so it's nice for me to finally be able to experience these things while I'm still, at my age, I'm very, very lucky to, have high levels of testosterone along with high blood pressure and cholesterol. But also to have, in addition to all these things, to have this sense of wonderment that I have at my age. So it'll be very, very nice to be able to play Spider-Man. Before I run out of time, I do want to get off on Ghost of Tsushima, which I think is a little different than I initially thought of, and in a good way. It really puts you in the shoes of a samurai. One of the things I noticed right away, and I pointed out to my girlfriend, was the footwork. While it was a little stiff, I thought it was very, it conveyed very well the sense of swordsmanship that you would find in something, a discipline like Kendo, conveyed over to being a samurai. So you very much were put in those shoes. The atmosphere, the color palette, the detail, the openness of that world were all astounding. I can't tell you that the trailer conveyed so many of those things, really drove the point home on so many of these things, but it definitely opened the door for that sense of exploration, the sense of authentic samurai history and high drama, especially with the showdown at the end with the maple leaves and that singular tree, and then the army, the invading army coming in the background as these two samurai are resolving their issues with the impending invasion and the incoming archers, the arrows coming in, the flaming arrows. It was poetic and cinematic all at once, while driving home that visceral sense of violence with the duel. It's just an amazing thing to behold. And it's one of those experiences that you don't really know how much you're going to enjoy it until you do, much like Assassin's Creed Odyssey was for me. Being able to run around in ancient Egypt, it was just amazing. So kudos to Sony for that. Another one was Death Stranding. And while there wasn't much of a surprise, we did get to actually see gameplay. Still a little confusing and whatnot, but I still enjoyed it. And I still felt like we made a little bit of progress in understanding what this game is going to be all about. And I definitely enjoyed the models and to see how human they are, and got a glimpse of what the open world will be like. We're a porter running around, so it's still very interesting. I can't say I'm utterly fascinated with this game yet, but all the pieces are starting to add up to something that could be very, very compelling. Uh, last of Last of Us, last of the games that I'm going to discuss here is going to be The Last of Us Part Two. Now, I don't want to delve too much into it, but I will bring up the whole political aspect of it. You know, with the it's not so much about the two girls kissing. That's something that we've already accepted, irrespective of your political views or your religious or whatnot. Um, you're gonna know that, hey, Ellie is LGBT member. She's a lesbian. She's gonna like girls and whatnot. Some people didn't appreciate that being in their face, but they took it. To me, it didn't faze me. At one point, I was a little uncomfortable with it in the sense that I was still identifying with Ellie as a 14-year-old girl, and then I realized that this is not a minor, that we politicizing minors in their sexual orientation in a video game. That these are basically adults. So the whole thing about her being a threat or whatever. Listen, I'm 45 years old. I've got a girlfriend. I'm not affected by it as much as I know some of you young guys out there might not appreciate that. But I think the worst thing is finding out later that the game director for The Last of Us was kind of rattling that saber, trying to agitate the fan base by putting statements out on Twitter as far as fellas, don't be threatened, it's just a girl or whatnot. For me, I don't think as an artist, I don't know. To me, if anything, it puts the game in potential peril if you're going to have people boycotting it because they feel like they're being agitated on purpose. But having said all that, hopefully I didn't delve into that too much. One of the things I found amazing, and I realize it very well may be a downgrade to it, but was the third-person gameplay and how seamless and cinematic and visceral it was. Yes, some of the violence is a little gratuitous, and the older you get, the more sensitive you become to some of these forms of artistic depictions. It starts to wear on your psyche. You can only see people getting shot and murdered so many times before you develop an artificial form of PTSD. And I can tell you right now, it doesn't really look like a good time if you're constantly having to see people being disemboweled in a more and more gratuitous way. Having said that, it can lend itself to the drama of the game, if done tastefully and sparingly, to convey an atmosphere or mood. But if it's done too gratuitously, that's probably something I'd have more of a problem with and would have to kind of opt out of finishing the game if I thought it was just really an unpleasant experience. But what it does for me, as far as the seamless transitions and variety of intuitive and immersive animations and interactions, is really wrap up third-person perspective in a bow and make you feel a sense of immersion in third person that you normally don't. And this speaks very highly to the talent and potential of scope and scale that's possible even within this generation, which I honestly, to tell you the truth, I was starting to wonder if it was going to be a PlayStation 5 title, but right there on the screen it was telling you gameplay from a PlayStation 4 Pro. So, the long and short of it is that from what I get out of The Last of Us 2 is that if a developer like CD Projekt Red wants to put third person in Cyberpunk 2077, they should be able to find a way to do it. That's my next video, guys. You guys please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you guys some more. Bye-bye.